Okay, so here's what they're not telling you on the news right now. The Supreme Court just handed Donald Trump one of the biggest losses of his presidency. And I'm not talking about some random case nobody cares about. I'm talking about multiple rulings back to back that just slam the brakes on Trump's entire plan to reshape how the federal government works. Here's the wild part. Most people have no idea this is even happening. While everyone's distracted by whatever drama's trending on Twitter, the Supreme Court, the same court Trump basically built with his three appointees, just told him no on some of the most important power moves he's tried to make. We're talking immigration, firing federal officials, and who actually controls the agencies that run this country. This is huge. This is the kind of stuff that changes how America operates for decades, and it's happening right now. So let me break down what just went down, because this affects you whether you voted for Trump or not. This is about how much power any president should have. And the Supreme Court just drew a line in the sand. The three major blocks first, October 3rd. Supreme Court blocks Trump's plan to end temporary protected status for over 300,000 Venezuelan migrants. Now, this isn't really about immigration. It's about whether a president can just wake up one morning and change the rules for hundreds of thousands of people without going through the proper legal process. Trump's team argued he has total executive authority. The Supreme Court said, yeah, no. At least 3 justices dissented and called this a grave misuse of emergency powers. So now we've got justices fighting with other justices about whether they're being too hard on Trump. Second, the Supreme Court agreed to fast-track challenges to Trump firing Lisa Cook from the Federal Reserve Board. The Federal Reserve is supposed to be independent. Presidents aren't supposed to just fire people there because they don't like their decisions. Trump did it anyway. And now the Supreme Court's basically saying, we need to figure out if you're even allowed to do that. They set oral arguments for December. That's lightning speed for the Supreme Court. They don't move that fast unless something's really serious. Third, Trump ordered National Guard troops deployed, and the Supreme Court's like, hold up. We need to review whether you can even do that without proper authorization. So we've got immigration, firing federal officials, military deployments, all getting blocked in the span of like a week. This is unprecedented. I cannot remember a time when the Supreme Court hit a sitting president with this many roadblocks this fast. And here's where it gets really interesting. At least 30 federal judges have come out publicly and said the Supreme Court's handling of Trump cases is damaging the legitimacy of the entire judiciary. Some are saying the court's being too aggressive. Others are saying they're not aggressive enough, and they're enabling unchecked executive action. The judges themselves can't even agree on what's happening. So here's the question nobody's asking, but everybody should be. Is this the system working exactly as it's supposed to? Courts checking presidential power, separation of powers, all that civics class stuff actually happening in real time? Or is this a coordinated effort to stop Trump from doing what he was elected to do? Because depending on who you ask, you're going to get a completely different answer. And that divide, that's what's really tearing the country apart right now. Let me explain what's really at stake with the Lisa Cook case, because this one could reshape everything. Trump's legal argument is based on something called the unitary executive theory. Basically, it says the president is in charge of the entire executive branch, period. If you work for the executive branch, the president can fire you. Simple as that. But here's the problem. Congress specifically set up agencies like the Fed to be independent. They gave these positions set terms and said you can only be fired for cause, not just because the president doesn't like you. This is a huge constitutional question. Does Congress have the power to limit who the president can fire? Or does the president have absolute authority? The Supreme Court could reshape how the federal government works. If the court says Trump can fire anyone, every independent agency becomes not independent. The president controls everything. If they say he can't, then Congress has successfully limited presidential power in a major way. There's no middle ground here. And it's not just these cases. The Supreme Court is also dealing with challenges to Trump's tariff policies, the mass layoffs of federal employees he ordered, funding cuts to agencies. Every major policy Trump has pushed is tied up in legal challenges. And more, the Supreme Court is having to step in and referee. Now, if you're a Trump supporter, you're probably thinking this is all a deep state plot to stop him from implementing the agenda voters elected him to pursue. You're thinking, he won the election, he should be able to govern, and these courts are just obstructing him at every turn. And look, that's not a crazy argument. Trump did win. He does have a mandate from voters, but if you're not a Trump supporter, you're thinking, thank God the courts are doing their job. Trump is trying to grab power that no president should have, and the only thing standing between us and authoritarianism is the judiciary doing what it's supposed to do, checking executive overreach. And that's also not a crazy argument. The whole point of having three branches of government is that they limit each other. That's the system. So who's right? Well, that's the trillion-dollar question. But here's what we know for sure. This is all heading toward a major showdown about presidential power. And whatever the Supreme Court decides, it's going to set the rules for every president who comes after Trump. This isn't just about him. This is about what we allow presidents to do, period. Here's what matters for real people's lives. Those 300,000 Venezuelans on TPS, right now, they're in limbo. They don't know if they're going to be able to stay or face deportation. They can't plan their lives. Federal employees who got laid off, are they getting their jobs back? Businesses dealing with Trump's tariffs, do they need to adjust their supply chains? All of this uncertainty has real consequences. It affects the economy, jobs, families, communities. And the longer these legal battles drag on, the more people are stuck in this uncertainty. This is also reshaping the political landscape heading into 2026. Midterm elections are just over a year away, and both parties are going to weaponize these court decisions. Republicans are going to run on the idea that Trump's being obstructed, that he won the election, but can't govern because unelected judges keep blocking him. Democrats are going to run on the idea that Trump is trying to be a dictator, and the courts are stopping him. And voters are going to have to decide which narrative they believe. Here's what to watch for next. December oral arguments on the Lisa Cook firing. That's going to be huge. How the justices question the lawyers will tell us a lot about where this is headed. The TPS case is still playing out in lower courts, but it'll probably end up back at the Supreme Court for a full ruling. Same with the National Guard deployment issue. Same with the tariffs and everything else. We're looking at months, probably years of this stuff winding through the legal system. The Supreme Court just threw up major roadblocks to Trump's agenda on multiple fronts. Whether you think that's good or bad depends on your politics, but either way, it's a big deal. The legal battles are going to continue for months or years. The political fallout is already shaping the 2026 midterms, and the constitutional questions being decided right now will define how the presidency works for decades to come. This isn't just news. This is history being made in real time. And most people aren't even paying attention because it's complicated and it's not as flashy as whatever drama's trending on social media. But trust me, this matters. This is the stuff that actually changes how America operates. So stay tuned, because this story is far from over. More rulings are going to drop. More executive actions are going to get challenged. And somewhere in all of this, we're going to figure out what kind of presidency we want and what kind of country we're going to be. That's where we're at. More coming soon as this develops.